Widowed rancher took in a pregnant Navajo woman, then faced outlaws who came to erase her. The desert sun burned red over the distant canyons, casting long shadows across the rocky plains. John Whitaker, a widowed rancher, squinted against the heat as he walked among his herd. The cattle were no ordinary animals. They had been bred to survive on this harsh, low-gravity world where storms could rise suddenly and the water was scarce. John's life had been quiet for many years, ever since the death of his wife. He rose with the sun, worked with his hands, and slept under the wide, empty sky. Loneliness had become a companion, and the desert had become both prison and home. As he inspected a small enclosure, he noticed movement on the horizon. At first, he thought it might be a sandstorm, but as he watched, a figure emerged, slender, limping, carrying a bundle wrapped tightly in cloth. John's hand instinctively moved to the sidearm at his belt, a habit formed from years of guarding his ranch against rustlers and desert bandits. Yet something in the figure's slow, careful steps made him hesitate. There was no aggression. There was only exhaustion and fear. He walked toward the stranger cautiously. The closer he got, the more he could see her face. She was young, with high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of long journeys and unspoken pain. Her hair, dark and tangled, clung to her forehead, and her clothes were torn and dusty. In her arms, she cradled something, small, soft, and strangely warm. She moved as if she had no strength left to resist the desert itself. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, I need help." John stopped a few feet away. He studied her carefully. The desert could be cruel, and people often came with lies to gain shelter. But there was no deceit in her eyes, only desperation. He saw the faint curve of her stomach, swollen with the unmistakable sign of pregnancy. His heart tightened. Compassion overcame caution. "Come inside," he said, his voice steady but low. "You can rest at the ranch." Her eyes widened in relief, and she nodded weakly. Together, they walked the remaining distance. John could feel the weight of her fear, the urgency in her steps, and something stirred within him, a protective instinct he thought had died with his wife. He led her into the main house, a small, sturdy structure built from desert stone and metal. Inside, the air was cooler, shaded from the burning sun. The smell of dust and wood filled the space, familiar and grounding. "I'm John Whitaker," he said, offering a hand which she took reluctantly. "What's your name?" "Kaya," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but there was strength in it. "Kaya Yazzie," he nodded. There was a pause, a silence thick with unsaid words. Kaya seemed hesitant, almost as if speaking could bring danger. Finally, she sat on a bench near the fire pit, carefully laying down the bundle she carried. John went to the kitchen area and returned with a bowl of water and some dried bread. She took them gratefully, her hands shaking. I ran from them," she said finally, her eyes flicking toward the window as if expecting something to appear. "Outlaws, they want me, they want the child." John frowned. The desert had seen many crimes, but this sounded different. "Why? What did you do to make them chase you?" Kaya shook her head. "It's not about me, it's about the child. They are experimenting on people. Pregnant women, they want to erase what comes next." John's hand tightened around the edge of the table. He had heard whispers of strange gangs in the desert, people who mixed old-world ruthlessness with technology far beyond the frontier. But he had never imagined they would target someone like this, someone innocent. He looked at Kaya, her slight frame trembling with exhaustion, and he felt a fire of determination. No one would harm her on his watch. "You'll be safe here," he said firmly. "As long as I'm alive, no one's touching you." Kaya's eyes shimmered, and for a moment she seemed close to tears. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The rest of the day passed in cautious quiet. John brought water to the small garden, checked the perimeter fences, and kept an eye on the horizon. Kaya rested inside, but her presence was unsettling in the way that silence can be. Her soft breathing, the faint hum of life within her, the sense that danger was always close. John couldn't shake the feeling that the desert itself had changed, that shadows moved differently, and that something in the distance was watching. As the sun began to sink behind the canyons, casting long, eerie shadows across the land, strange things started happening. One of the cattle, usually calm and steady, began pacing frantically, low growls escaping its throat. Another cow nudged the fence, ears flat, eyes wide. The wind shifted, carrying metallic sounds faint but distinct, like the hum of hovering machines. John's hand went to his sidearm, heart pounding. He had seen many storms, many threats, but this felt different, unnatural. Kaya stirred from her bench, sensing the tension. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low. "Something's coming," John said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "I don't know what yet, but we'll be ready." Night fell, but the desert's chill did little to calm their nerves. John set up a small circle of lanterns around the house, checked the locks, and kept watch at the windows. Kaya sat by the fire, rubbing her belly gently. He watched her, thinking about how fragile life could be in a place like this, how even the strongest could fall if the desert or men with weapons decided it. Yet there was something remarkable about her, a strength that belied her size, a resilience that made him believe they might survive this together. Around midnight, he heard it, a faint hum in the distance, like machinery moving across sand. He strained his eyes, trying to see through the darkness. Small points of light appeared, hovering above the dunes. They moved methodically, searching. His stomach tightened. The outlaws had found her faster than he expected. Kaya's hand gripped his arm. "They are here," she whispered. There was no panic in her voice, only the quiet acceptance of a danger long feared. John nodded. "We'll handle it," he said, though he didn't know how yet. He led her to a hidden room behind the kitchen, a small cellar he had built years ago. It was cramped but secure, reinforced with metal and stone. "Stay here," he instructed. "No matter what happens, stay inside." She nodded, eyes wide but calm. "I trust you," she said. He gave her a brief nod and went outside, stepping into the night. The hum grew louder. Shadows moved along the dunes, and John realized these were no ordinary humans. Something in their steps, their timing, their machines, suggested a mix of human cruelty and alien technology. They were hunters, precise and relentless. He adjusted his rifle, feeling the familiar weight in his hands, the cold metal grounding him. He moved silently among the rocks, using the terrain to his advantage. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He had to protect Kaya. He had to protect the child. He would not fail. The Outlaws' scout appeared first, a lone figure hovering just above the sand on a small skiff. John waited until it was close enough, then fired. The shot hit its engine, causing it to sputter and crash into a dune. Sparks flew, and the desert echoed with the sound. John felt a surge of hope. He had made the first strike, but he knew it was only the beginning. The desert was vast, but so were the enemies. He had to prepare, to anticipate, to survive. Kaya's life, her child, and the fragile hope they represented depended on him. The quiet ranch, the lonely desert, the distant red sun, all of it was about to become a battlefield. John returned to the house and whispered through the cellar door, "We have time for now, but we must be ready. They will come again." Kaya nodded, her hand resting over her belly. "Then we will be ready together." Outside, the desert wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of more machines, more danger. But for the first time in many years, John felt alive, not just surviving, but fighting for something greater than himself. In the lonely desert, under a crimson sky, a widowed rancher and a pregnant woman forged the first threads of trust, courage, and hope. The battle for survival had begun, and neither would back down. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, casting long shadows across the rocky plains. The air was dry, carrying the faint scent of dust and sand. John Whitaker moved quietly around the ranch, checking the fences and the perimeter. He had spent the night listening, alert to every unusual sound, but the outlaws had vanished after the scouts' crash. For now, the desert was silent, but John knew better than to trust it completely. Inside the house, Kaya stirred, sitting up slowly from the small cellar where she had slept. Her belly was already rounded with the life she carried, and she rubbed it gently, feeling the faint movements of the child within. Despite the danger, she found comfort in John's presence. He had risked himself for her, and that trust, fragile yet powerful, anchored her courage. John came inside carrying a fresh bucket of water and some bread. "You need to eat," he said softly. "It's not much, but it will give you strength." Kaya took the food with a faint smile. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that spoke of long journeys and fear. "Do you think they will come back?" "They will," John said honestly. "They never stop when they want something, but we'll be ready." The day passed slowly, each movement measured and careful. John checked the cattle, ensuring they were safe and calm, while Kaya rested and shared stories of her past. She spoke of her family, of the land she once called home, and of the traditions her people had passed down through generations. Even in danger, her words carried warmth and history, a reminder that life and culture could survive in the harshest conditions. As afternoon approached, John noticed something strange in the distance. Dust rose along the horizon, but it did not move like a normal storm. The pattern was too deliberate, too calculated. He narrowed his eyes and saw shapes moving, hovering skiffs glinting in the sun, carrying figures armed with weapons beyond anything John had seen before. Plasma rifles, metal armor that shimmered, and small drones that circled above like predatory birds. "They're coming," John muttered, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. Kaya stood beside him, calm despite the fear that must have gripped her heart. "Then we must prepare," she said, her voice steady. "I know ways to protect us, ways my ancestors taught me." John raised an eyebrow. "Ways," Kaya nodded. "We can use the land, the canyons, the rocks, the hidden paths. They may have machines, but they do not know this land as we do. We can make it hard for them to reach us." Together, they began to fortify the ranch. John worked on reinforcing the fences, sharpening wooden stakes, and converting old farming tools into simple traps. Kaya studied the surrounding rocks and dunes, pointing out areas where they could hide, where they could force the outlaws into narrow passes, and where they could ambush them if necessary. Her knowledge combined ancient wisdom with practical survival skills, blending the traditions of her people with the realities of the desert. By late afternoon, the first attackers arrived. A small group of outlaws hovered just above the dunes, scanning for movement. Their plasma rifles glinted in the sunlight and the drones buzzed low, scanning the ground. John and Kaya crouched behind a ridge, watching carefully. "They are scouts," Kaya said. "They want to see what we have. We cannot fight all of them at once." John nodded. He adjusted his rifle, checking the sights and the chamber. He knew they needed to be clever, to use the land and their wits rather than strength alone. As the outlaws moved closer, John fired a single shot. It hit a drone midair, causing it to spiral and crash into the sand. The outlaws froze for a moment, then advanced more cautiously. John fired again, picking off one of the scouts riding a small hover skiff. Sparks flew and a brief firefight broke out, but John and Kaya used the rocks and terrain to their advantage, staying low and striking quickly. Despite the danger, Kaya remained calm. She moved silently, her hands steady as she helped John aim and reload. "They will regroup," she said, "but we have slowed them. That is all that matters for now." The outlaws did regroup, returning with more skiffs and drones. They brought heavier weapons, aiming to overrun the ranch. John realized that staying on open ground would be suicidal. He needed a better plan, something that used the land's natural defenses. He led Kaya to a narrow canyon just beyond the ranch. The walls rose high, blocking the sun and creating a shadowed path that the outlaws' drones could not easily penetrate. "Here," he said. "They can't see everything here. We can ambush them if they come through." Kaya nodded, understanding immediately. She began marking the best positions, suggesting where they could set traps and where John should focus his shots. Together, they prepared the canyon, laying spikes, covering traps with sand, and marking positions for maximum advantage. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the outlaws approached the canyon. Their hover skiffs glided silently, their drones scanning for movement. John and Kaya waited, hearts pounding but steady. When the first skiff entered the narrow passage, John fired. The shot hit the engine and the skiff crashed into the canyon wall with a loud clang. Sparks flew and the outlaws scrambled to regroup. Kaya moved swiftly, guiding John to higher ground where they could see the rest of the approaching gang. They fired from above, using the traps and terrain to keep the outlaws at bay. The battle was fierce but measured. John's skill with the rifle, combined with Kaya's knowledge of the land, allowed them to hold their ground. During a brief pause in the attack, John looked at Kaya. "You're stronger than I thought," he said. Kaya smiled faintly, a shadow of relief crossing her face. "I have had to be, for this child, for my family, for myself." They both knew the fight was not over. The outlaws would return, more determined and more dangerous. But for now, they had survived, and that survival gave them hope. They used the pause to tend to the minor injuries they had sustained, reload their weapons, and prepare for the next wave. As night fell, the desert cooled, but the tension remained. The faint glow of distant stars reflected off the canyon walls, creating strange shadows. John and Kaya sat quietly for a moment, listening to the wind and the occasional hum of distant machinery. "You think they'll come again tonight?" Kaya asked softly. "They will," John said, "but we're ready, we have to be." Kaya nodded, placing a hand gently on her belly. "I hope the child will be strong," she said. "They are coming for him too." John placed a hand over hers, feeling the life within her. "We'll protect him," he said firmly. "No matter what comes, no one will take him from us." The night was long, filled with the sounds of the desert, distant howls, the rustle of sand, and the occasional flicker of drone lights on the horizon. John kept watch while Kaya rested. He thought about the life they were defending, the child growing within her, and the future that depended on their courage and skill. By dawn, the outlaws had retreated, leaving signs of their presence in the disturbed sand and broken debris. John inspected the perimeter, noting their tracks and estimating their numbers. They would return, bigger and more determined. But he also knew something important. The outlaws did not know the land like he and Kaya did. They had underestimated the desert, and that gave them an edge. Kaya emerged from the cellar, stretching and rubbing her hands together. "We need more than traps," she said. "We need a plan, a real plan if they come back stronger." John nodded, already thinking ahead. "We'll use the canyon, we'll use the terrain, we'll use everything we have." Together, they began to plan, drawing out positions, marking weak points, and thinking about every possible move the outlaws could make. It was a mental battle as much as a physical one, and both of them knew that their survival depended on intelligence, courage, and trust. The desert was quiet for now, but both knew the quiet was temporary. The battle for Kaya, her child, and the ranch was only beginning. Every sound, every shadow, every movement in the sand could mean danger. Yet, in the midst of fear and uncertainty, a bond had formed between the widowed rancher and the pregnant woman. It was a bond forged in trust, necessity, and shared courage, a bond that would carry them through the dangers to come. The sun rose higher, the canyon walls casting long shadows, and John looked at Kaya. "No matter what happens," he said, "we face it together." Kaya nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Together," she echoed. And with that, they prepared for the next wave of danger, ready to defend the life growing within her, the land they called home, and the hope that they could survive against impossible odds. The desert air was cool under the pale light of a crescent moon, but the calm was only an illusion. John Whitaker moved quietly along the canyon ridge, checking traps and listening for any sound that might betray the outlaws' approach. Kaya stayed close behind him, careful to keep her steps light and steady, despite the weight of the life she carried within her. Both knew the danger was real, and that tonight the desert would no longer be silent. Distant lights flickered across the dunes. The outlaws were returning, this time in greater numbers. Their hover skiffs glided smoothly over the sand, each one carrying a figure armed with plasma rifles, while small drones darted like insects above, scanning for movement. John adjusted his rifle, checking the sights and the chamber. Kaya crouched beside him, her hand brushing against his shoulder. "We need to hold them here," she whispered. "This canyon will be our advantage. Narrow passes will slow them down." John nodded. "We'll use every trick we know, but we can't let them get close to you or the child." The first skiffs entered the canyon. Sparks flew as John fired carefully, picking off engines and targeting drones. Each shot echoed against the canyon walls, bouncing back like a warning to anyone daring to approach. The outlaws pressed forward, their plasma rifles flaring in the dim light, creating ghostly flashes across the rocky walls. Kaya guided John to higher ground, pointing out where traps had been set. Wooden stakes coated with sharpened metal lined the narrow path below, hidden beneath loose sand. Rocks were positioned to roll down with a gentle push, ready to strike any skiff or rider who misjudged their movement. Every detail mattered. Every second counted. The outlaws tried to advance, but the canyon worked against them. One skiff struck a hidden spike, throwing the rider off balance. Sparks erupted as metal scraped against stone, and the machine toppled, skidding into the sand. Another drone was shot down by John, its engine sputtering before it crashed into the canyon wall. Amid the chaos, Kaya's hand rested over her belly. A faint glow appeared, almost imperceptible at first, but it shimmered and pulsed like a heartbeat. The unborn child moved as if sensing danger, and a soft energy radiated from her, rippling outward. Small sparks flickered along the canyon walls, and some of the outlaws stumbled as if their machines were disrupted. John noticed the effect immediately. "What is happening?" he asked, awe and concern in his voice. They are not ordinary," Kaya said, her voice hushed. "The child, it is special. I felt it once before, and now it is showing itself." John's eyes widened. He had suspected something extraordinary from the moment he had met Kaya, but now it was undeniable. The outlaws were not just after her, they were after something beyond human understanding. He tightened his grip on his rifle, more determined than ever. The battle intensified. Hover skiffs attempted to move through the canyon faster, but the combination of John's sharpshooting, the hidden traps, and the strange energy emanating from Kaya's belly slowed them down. Sparks flew, lasers flared, and the sound of metal clashing against rock filled the air. John fired with precision, targeting engines, wheels, and weapons, while Kaya instructed him on where to focus next. Her knowledge of the land and instinctive awareness of danger made her more than a passenger. She was his partner in survival. Despite the chaos, they moved as one. When a skiff tried to ascend a rocky slope, Kaya whispered, "Push the boulder." John rolled a large rock down the path. It crashed into the skiff, sending sparks flying and forcing the rider to crash into the sand. Another drone approached from above, and the glow from Kaya's child flickered, creating a small field of energy that disrupted its sensors. The drone wobbled before falling into the canyon below. For a brief moment, the battle slowed. Both John and Kaya were breathing heavily, their clothes scorched and dusty, but neither showed signs of surrender. They exchanged a glance, an unspoken understanding that they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the life that would soon enter the world, a life that might change everything if it survived. The outlaws were relentless. More skiffs appeared on the horizon, moving faster, coordinated, and ruthless. John realized that they could not hold them indefinitely. The canyon had provided an advantage, but it would not protect them forever. They needed a plan that went beyond traps and rifles. "We can't keep this up much longer," John said, his voice low but firm. "We need to find a way to drive them off or we'll be overrun." Kaya nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant lights. "There is a place," she said, "an old station hidden in the canyon. My family used it long ago. It has walls, tunnels, and technology we can use." John's brow furrowed. "Technology?" Kaya led him carefully through a narrow passage, avoiding the patrols of skiffs. The canyon walls closed in, shadows deepening as they approached a small rock formation. Beneath it, hidden by layers of sand and stone, was the entrance to an old station, abandoned and silent. Its doors were heavy metal, with panels flickering faintly, still partially powered by ancient generators. Inside, the station was cool and dark. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs clung to corners, but it was solid, protected from the outlaws and the desert. Kaya showed John a series of controls, explaining how to activate defenses. Small turrets, long unused, hummed to life, and energy fields shimmered along the walls. "This will help," she said. "It won't stop them forever, but it can hold them at bay long enough for us to plan." John nodded, impressed. The outlaws were dangerous, but the station gave them hope. They positioned themselves strategically, preparing for the next wave. Kaya's child moved again, glowing faintly, and John felt a strange energy that seemed to strengthen them both. The desert outside was quiet now, but the calm was temporary. Before long, the outlaws returned, this time more organized. Their plasma rifles glowed in the darkness, and the hum of their hover skiffs filled the canyon. They advanced toward the station, but John and Kaya were ready. Turrets fired, hitting engines and shields. Traps triggered, sending sparks and debris toward the attackers. And through it all, the unborn child's energy pulsed, creating small disturbances that disoriented the outlaws. The battle raged through the night. John moved with practiced precision, his rifle finding every vulnerable target. Kaya assisted, guiding his shots, marking weak points, and ensuring that every move counted. The station's defenses, combined with their skill, gave them an edge they could not have had outside. As dawn approached, the outlaws began to retreat, leaving behind broken skiffs and drones. They would return, John knew, but this time the cost had been higher than they expected. The station held, Kaya and her child were safe for now, and John felt a sense of relief that was rare in the harsh desert. He looked at Kaya, her face pale but determined, and saw the strength that had carried them through the night. "We did it," he said, his voice low but steady. "For now," she replied. "They will be back, we must be ready." John nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility they shared. This was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a battle to protect life itself. The child she carried was special, and the outlaws' relentless pursuit proved that. They had won the night, but the war was far from over. Kaya placed her hand on her belly, feeling the life within. "They want him," she whispered, "but they will not have him." "Not while we are here." John placed his hand over hers. "We'll protect him," he said firmly, "no matter what it takes." The canyon was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the desert, but John knew that this silence was temporary. The outlaws were clever, ruthless, and persistent. They would return, and when they did, John and Kaya would have to be stronger, faster, and smarter than ever before. As the first light of dawn broke over the canyon walls, John and Kaya prepared for the day ahead. They checked the station's defenses, repaired what was damaged, and planned for the next attack. Despite exhaustion, they were resolute. Together, they were more than a rancher and a pregnant woman. They were a team, bound by trust, courage, and the shared goal of survival. And in the quiet moments, when the desert seemed peaceful and the sun painted the rocks gold, they allowed themselves a brief hope. A hope that the child she carried would live, that the outlaws could be defeated, and that the desert, harsh and unforgiving as it was, could still be a place of life, courage, and love. The battle was far from over, but John Whitaker and Kaya Yazzie were ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The desert had tested them, the outlaws had challenged them, and the night had tried to break them. Yet here they stood, strong, determined, and unyielding. For the life growing within Kaya, for the hope of a new beginning, and for the promise of a future worth fighting for, they would not fail. The desert was quiet under the early morning sky, but the calm was deceptive. John Whitaker and Kaya Yazzie had spent the night preparing the old canyon station for the inevitable return of the outlaws. The small turrets hummed faintly, and the energy fields shimmered along the walls, casting ghostly light across the floor. Kaya rested as best she could, her hands cradling her swollen belly, while John checked the perimeter and sharpened his rifle. Both knew that today could be the day the outlaws made their final move. "We cannot let them take us by surprise again," John said, his voice low but steady. "They will come, and they will be relentless," Kaya nodded. "Then we must use everything we have, every path, every trap, every trick. We cannot let them get close, not to me, not to the child." John admired her courage. Even in the face of exhaustion and danger, she had remained calm, focused, and resilient. He felt a surge of determination. For her, for the child, and for the hope of a life free from fear, he would fight with everything he had. The first sign of movement came as the sun rose higher, painting the canyon walls with golden light. Dust rose in the distance, faint but distinct, and John's eyes narrowed. The outlaws were approaching faster than before, their numbers greater, their hover skiffs cutting across the desert like dark birds of prey. Drones buzzed ahead, scanning for movement, and the faint glint of plasma rifles caught the sunlight. "They're here," Kaya whispered, her voice calm but urgent. "We must hold them at bay long enough to escape." John checked the rifle one last time and positioned himself near the canyon entrance, where the narrow path would force the outlaws to advance single file. Kaya stayed close, guiding him to the best vantage points, her instincts sharp despite the weight she carried. The first skiffs entered the canyon, and the battle began in earnest. John fired with precision, disabling engines and targeting drones, while Kaya activated the station's defenses. Turrets spun to life, firing in short bursts, while energy fields shimmered along the walls, creating barriers the outlaws could not penetrate. But the outlaws were clever. They adjusted their tactics, sending smaller skiffs to flank the canyon from above. Sparks flew, metal clanged, and the air was thick with tension. John's heart raced, but his hands remained steady. Each shot counted. Every moment of hesitation could be fatal. Suddenly, Kaya's child moved, and a soft glow spread outward, filling the chamber with a strange, pulsing light. The outlaws' drones wavered, engines faltering, and a few skiffs spun out of control, crashing into the canyon walls. John stared in awe. The energy from her unborn child seemed to create a protective field, repelling attacks and confusing the enemy. "They are stronger than we thought," Kaya whispered. "But this gives us a chance." John adjusted his aim, targeting the remaining skiffs, and fired with renewed determination. The canyon echoed with the sound of gunfire, the hum of drones, and the occasional explosion as skiffs and machines fell to the sand. Yet more outlaws advanced, relentless and determined. John knew that holding them off alone would not be enough. "Follow me," Kaya said suddenly. "There is a hidden passage in the back of the station. We can use it to escape and draw them into a trap." John nodded. Together, they moved through narrow corridors and dimly lit tunnels, using the station's hidden paths to stay ahead of their pursuers. The outlaws entered the canyon, expecting easy prey, but the station's defenses delayed them. Turrets fired and energy fields blocked the path, slowing the attackers. As they reached the hidden passage, Kaya's glow intensified, and John realized the child was reacting to the danger. A soft hum filled the air, and the walls of the tunnel vibrated faintly. The energy seemed to push back against the intruders, creating a protective shield around them. John felt a sense of awe and fear. This child was extraordinary, unlike anything he had ever seen. They emerged from the passage into a narrow canyon floor, where the rocks formed natural choke points. Kaya whispered instructions, and John positioned themselves strategically. When the outlaws arrived, expecting to sweep through, they were met with a barrage of precise gunfire, energy pulses, and carefully triggered traps. One skiff crashed into a boulder. Another hit a hidden spike, sending sparks and metal flying. Drones malfunctioned, hovering uselessly as the glow from Kaya's child interfered with their sensors. The battle raged for hours. The desert sun climbed higher, casting harsh light on the chaos below. John and Kaya fought with skill and courage, moving together as a unit, covering each other's weaknesses. The outlaws pressed harder, but the canyon favored John and Kaya. Every shot, every trap, every pulse of energy from the unborn child slowed the attackers. Finally, the remaining outlaws realized the fight was lost. Their skiffs were damaged, drones destroyed, and their numbers dwindling. One by one, they retreated into the desert, leaving behind their weapons and equipment. John lowered his rifle, exhausted but relieved. Kaya leaned against him, her hands still resting on her belly, and the glow faded as the danger receded. They had survived. For now. John led Kaya to a small alcove in the canyon where they could rest and recover. The desert wind stirred, carrying the scent of sand and dust, but it felt peaceful for the first time in days. Kaya smiled faintly, her eyes tired but bright. "We did it," John said softly. "For now," Kaya replied. "They will be back eventually, but this child, it is strong." "It gives us hope," John nodded, "and we will protect it. No matter what comes, we will face it together." Kaya rested for a moment, her hand over her belly. She could feel the child moving, sensing the calm after the storm. "I feel safe," she said quietly. "Because you are here." John placed a hand over hers. "We are a team," he said, "and nothing will break us, not the desert, not the outlaws, not anything." The sun rose fully over the canyon, painting the rocks gold and red. The desert seemed alive with possibilities, no longer just a place of danger and loneliness. John and Kaya looked out over the rugged landscape, feeling a sense of accomplishment and cautious hope. The battle had tested them, but it had also brought them closer together, forging a bond that could not be broken by fear or violence. As they prepared to move to a safer location, John glanced at the horizon. "We need to get to the hidden sanctuary," he said. "It is further in the canyon system where the land protects us and the child can be safe." Kaya nodded. "I know the way. My ancestors built paths here long before the outlaws. We will be safe there." They packed what supplies they could carry, moving carefully through the canyon. The desert was quiet, but every sound reminded them to stay alert. The outlaws might return, but John and Kaya were ready. The child's energy continued to shimmer faintly, a protective presence that gave them strength and courage. After hours of careful travel, they reached a secluded valley hidden deep within the canyon. The entrance was narrow, concealed by rocks, and the valley was filled with natural barriers, cliffs, boulders, and thick vegetation that shielded them from the desert beyond. It was a perfect sanctuary. Kaya smiled, her face filled with relief. "Here we can rest. Here the child can be born safely." John looked around, taking in the hidden beauty of the valley. "It's perfect," he said, "and we will defend it no matter what." Together, they prepared the valley as best they could, making it a home that was both safe and comfortable. Kaya rested, feeling the life within her, while John fortified the entrances, knowing that the outlaws might still try to follow. But for the first time in days, they felt a sense of peace. As night fell, Kaya's child moved once again, and the glow spread softly through the valley. John watched in awe as the energy pulsed, gentle yet strong, a reminder that life could be extraordinary even in the harshest conditions. They sat together under the stars, the desert vast and silent around them. John placed his arm around Kaya, feeling the warmth of her and the promise of the life they were protecting. "We made it," he said quietly. "For now, Kaya replied. But there was hope in her voice now, a quiet determination that had not been there before. And we will continue to protect him, always. The desert wind carried their whispers, mingling with the faint sounds of distant wildlife. The outlaws might still be out there, but in this hidden valley, John and Kaya had found a place of safety, a place to rest, and a place to begin anew. The child within Kaya glowed softly in the moonlight, a symbol of hope and the future they would protect together. John and Kaya knew that their lives had changed forever. They were no longer just a rancher and a pregnant woman. They were guardians of a new beginning, bound together by trust, courage, and love. In the heart of the desert, amidst the rocks and shadows, they had survived the outlaws, survived the night, and survived the fear. And for the first time, they could look forward to tomorrow, knowing that together they could face anything.